I have one question to add to that really quick.
Yeah.
Stretching.
I'm going right.
Okay.
I'm going there right now.
Okay.
How do dancers keep from being an inflammatory mess? So since my background is in concert dance, I know the answer to that. You can interrupt the cortisol production cycle by using vagal nerve breathing. So you have hypermobile people who go into yoga class and they start stretching, and they're stretching beyond the normal, and then their body starts shooting out cortisol, and they're like, oh my God, I felt terrible after yoga class. Yeah, you felt terrible after yoga class because your brain started sending out cortisol, and then you got inflamed. So if you're hypermobile, I tell you one of two things. Either don't listen to the teacher when you go to yoga class, which the yoga teachers don't like that, or when you get to the end of the motion, exhale. Okay? Exhale at the end of the motion. And then pull it back in. Because the belly breathing, which is in a different video, is a vagal nerve stimulus. So breathing with the belly, the exhale part of the belly breathing stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve interrupts the cortisol production. So this is how dancers avoid that inflammatory response. They train with their breathing, and all of their extensions are with an exhale. All of their extensions are with an exhale. Not after an exhale, not before an exhale. They are timed with the exhale. And so that exhale actually interrupts that cortisol release. So that is how dancers get around that whole fight or flight issue with stretching. So let's say you're going to physical therapy because your shoulder is messed up and your doctor ordered physical therapy, and you go to physical therapy and you feel terrible afterwards. Well, number one, you shouldn't be using more than 2 pounds of weight. And I'm going to have a bunch of physical therapists jump in here. And I have retired from physical therapy because I'm a licensed PTA. So I've been there and I know exactly what the protocols are. So I'm not saying this because I'm not experienced in physical therapy. And I will argue with any PT over this. And mark my words, the protocols will change. Hypermobile people should never exercise with more than 2 pounds of weight, period. Because more than 2 pounds of weight activates an inflammatory response in their body. Because their fight or flight brain perceives those 2 pounds of weight as a threat. And it is not necessary for a hypermobile person to exercise with more than 2 pounds of weight. I've done a full literature review on all of the research related to exercise in hypermobile people. And I'm going to get people who are going to contact me and who are going to criticize me or want to argue with me over this. And they can. And you don't have to agree with me. But I will tell you that research says, oh no, hypermobile people benefit from lifting weights. They benefit from increased strength lifting weights. None of those research articles ask, does that hypermobile person have more pain? And none of those research projects measure if they have more inflammation. None of them ask about pain or inflammation. So does it matter if you have more strength, if you hurt so much, or you're more inflamed that you're non-functional? No, it does not. So I don't think that the standards are applicable. I think they're totally inapplicable. Because I will guarantee you, if you are exercising a hypermobile population with more than 2 pounds of weight, you are, number one, increasing their pain, and number two, increasing their inflammation. Therefore, it's an invalid research study. There is some new research. They are actually starting to look at this. So I'm not that far off. I have said this for years, and people have criticized me for it forever, but the majority of the population does not have to be physically fit, lifting heavy weights 3 times a week for 30 minutes. That is not valid research. It really isn't, especially when it comes to the hypermobile person. So we really need some new research out there, especially when it comes to the hypermobile person. Now, the problem comes in that we already think in our brain, we've already been conditioned to think that if we're not exercising hard at the gym for 30 minutes, 3 times a week, that it's not valid. So you already believe that. But the truth of the matter is that really isn't as valid a research as everyone thinks it is, because no one has thought to look at that. Let's talk about that research. No one's ever thought to look at that in relationship to, well, blood types. Has anyone ever looked at that in relationship to blood types? Oh, heck no. We're just now starting to look at it in relationship to men versus women, right? A lot of our research is based on men from the military, right? When it comes to fitness. So a lot of our fitness, a lot of our weightlifting fitness research is based on the military who's trained to go out and kill people. They have to be strong, right? Because the government supported a lot of our fitness grants early on. So look at who pays for the research, because that kind of tells you a lot about the research. And then look at the population that the research is, number one, geared towards, or that the research population that is in the research study. I mean, just now we're starting to look at the differences between men and women in research. So all of the strengthening for hypermobility patients, I don't even think it's valid. We have a long way to go on it. A long, long way to go on it. When it comes to strength training and research, we haven't looked at it in relationship to blood types. We haven't looked at it in relationships to epigenetics, genetic makeup. We haven't looked at it in relationships to cultural backgrounds. Lots of variables there, lots of variables. So bottom line, hypermobility, don't exercise with more than 2 pounds of weights.